You're listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, giving you weekly sports analysis, opinions, and discussion. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and J-Raff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 172nd episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, alongside of me, co-host J-Raff.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Plenty to talk about. I know last week's show went pretty well, and got to talk about some of the topics that we're going to kind of hit on again. But there's a lot to talk about on tonight's topic.
Yeah, we're going to talk again NFL draft, and it's just dominating the topics in the studio here, and with most of the people that we interact with in the sports world. The focus is on the NFL draft. I know baseball just started, and there's a lot of baseball purists out there that probably get frustrated this time of year that the focus isn't necessarily all on the diamond, at least in the wide range that is sports media and personalities. But the NFL draft is just another one of the things that the NFL has locked down, part of their offseason. Essentially, there is no real NFL offseason until the draft has completed. We're talking May. And then you roll through maybe some slow time in May, June, and into July. But then when the calendar turns to July, even though it's not till the end of the month, everyone's excited for training camps to open. So the NFL really has maybe a 2-month down period, at least in the fans' eyes, when NBA and NHL playoffs take center stage, and then you get into the meat of the MLB season. But then right after the All-Star break, that lull that we have in July where there's literally no sports going on for a couple of days because the MLB's at their All-Star break. And, that's when the ESPN has their ESPY Awards. But there's actually literally nothing to watch on TV, at least in terms of the 4 professional sports that are huge in the United States.
July's still the best month.
July's still the best month. No. I think we've established that October is generally the best sports month of the year. But here in April, maybe you expect us to talk baseball, but we want to talk what's going to get people listening to the show. And as we were just looking at, the analytics say that football, by and large, is what gets people to listen to our show. Maybe not always tune in live, but on demand in the archive on Blog Talk Radio, Ustream, and the podcast that's posted on iTunes. Overwhelmingly, it's the shows that when we talk football, that's what's getting people to listen. And last week's show is a key example. I want to say it was because you weren't here and that people decided to tune in, but I know it's because we had an NFL draft expert on with us who's starting to make a name for himself out there as a scout. We had Kyle Krabs on from NDT Scouting, and it was a great show, answered a lot of questions. And a thing we wrapped up with at the end there where we did kind of our own mock draft live simulations. We were only able to get through part of it with the Eagles. That's going to carry over into this show. So that's what we're going to focus on is the NFL draft, and we're going to run Fan Speaks on the Clock Simulator. We're going to talk briefly about the Eagles just to touch on it with you here, but then we're going to move on to some of the other teams that I know, our regional audience enjoys hearing about, including the Cowboys, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Dolphins, and the Patriots.
Yeah, and like you said, looking at, the numbers, we're just giving the people what they want, right?
That's right.
Football. And let's be honest, there's not a whole lot to talk about baseball-wise for us anyway, so we're just going to pretend like it's not happening.
Right. As Phillies fans, we got, this is the way the season's going to go. They're going to lose 5, win 1 game. We'll be like, yay, and then they'll lose again the next day, which just happened as they won yesterday, lost today after losing, 5 or 6 in a row. Yep. So, yeah, pretty much what we expected. We really hope that they don't hit the 100L. That would be bad. Yeah. I think we're hoping to get close to 70 wins, but man,
it's going to be a fight to get there. We can see that.
Offense pretty putrid. Starting pitching has been inconsistent and pretty bad so far.
We did talk about it though. I know it's Double-A, but you and I, with it being very local, the Reading Fightin' Phils now, the Double-A affiliate of the Phillies. They've been off to, they've had some of the prospects that had a good start to the season. So, I think hopefully we'll be able to at least keep some optimism for down the road. Obviously, that's not going to help the big league team this year, but hopefully down the road we have that to look forward to.
Okay, I hate to break in here
I
with breaking
news.
news,
I think I know
but this literally just came across our Twitter feed. If you're not following us, if you can follow us on Twitter, Joe Mays and J-Raff, we put out show reminders and try to interact a bit with our followers on there. But Jay Glazer from Fox Sports has just posted a tweet that says the Eagles are planning to bring in Tim Tebow and sign him tomorrow as they begin their offseason program.
Championship.
So now, gone are Foles and McCoy and Macklin in Bradford, Murray, and now Tim Tebow.
Hey, Tim Tebow has more playoff wins than LaShawn McCoy does. Right?
This is true. Wow. I don't have much to say about that. I really don't think that Chip Kelly is actually going to go into the season with expecting much out of Tim Tebow, but if they want to see what he's got...
Could he end up being your third quarterback?
Why not?
You have him somewhere else at tight end where you let Casey go this year?
And it's an added element that he's used in his system before.
Right. And, there's no way that if things go according to plan, Tim Tebow is going to be the starter for the Eagles come the start of the season. That's not going to happen. People will freak out over this. And that's fine. They can. And I kind of like this because people are going to lose their minds.
Absolutely.
People are going to lose their minds. And they're going to lose their minds even more because it's Chip Kelly and the Eagles. And that kind of leads us right into what we were talking about.
But
let's kind of look at this piece before we get into this. Has Matt Barkley done anything to show that he deserves to be the third quarterback over a guy like Tim Tebow? I'm not saying Tim Tebow has a future as a starter in the NFL because I don't think he does anymore. But can he compete and be the third who can at least give you options somewhere else in an offense? Matt Barkley is not going to be active for most games.
Right.
He's taking up a spot on the roster, and he's not active. And if he is active, that's because your first quarterback got knocked out of the game. And your second quarterback probably got hurt. So I don't think, in terms of having him around, it's kind of like, I hate to say this because I have nothing against Matt Barkley, and he's really, man, you want to talk about a guy that should have come out a year earlier. Not that I don't know it would have worked out any better for him.
He would have been a top 10 pick.
Right. He was going to be maybe the top quarterback.
He fell to the fourth round?
Yeah. I mean,
ouch.
So I don't blame Chip Kelly for this. People are going to go nuts, and again, I'm just going to preach that in Chip we trust for now. Why not? You have to.
In 4 minutes, the Jay Glazer scoop has over 1,100 retweets. It's just the power of Tim Tebow. The power of Tebow compels you. So, here we are. All right, we're going to talk NFL draft. We're going to start about a little bit with the Eagles. But before we do that, we just want to mention that this is an interactive show. We love to have your take on whatever we're talking about. If you just want to give us a comment, a suggestion, a question, or if you want to rip apart what we're talking about, it's all game. There's multiple ways that you can contact us, and Justin has that information for you.
Yeah, like Joey said, we'd love to have your take on any of the things we're talking about, whether it's the breaking news or the draft talk that we'll talk about. You can email the show using the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. Again, joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. You can also call the show using the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox. The Mays Sandwich Shop hotline at 530-563-6297. Again, 530-563-6297. We're also all over social media. Like Joey said, we had the Twitter page pulled up and got some of that breaking news. I think it came across on your phone at the same time. But, so you can get in touch with us there as well.
Does that seat feeling warm? A little rusty there. I don't know, my dad's sniping. He's ready to jump right in.
If the editor would have had the phone number up for me, I wouldn't have had to look across the studio.
Excuses. Okay, so Facebook and Twitter, that's where we are active most of the time, especially on Facebook at this moment. We're going to start fleshing out our Google Plus page. We also have an archive on not only iTunes and Blog Talk Radio, but the podcast is available on iTunes, but we also put these Ustream video shows up on YouTube, so you can find any of our old shows dating back a couple months now. If you want to tackle or rip apart anything we predicted, you can find all that on YouTube. So, all right. I think quickly before we dive into the NFL draft talk, I'm going to geek out here a little bit, and a nice little segue into the images we're going to use while we talk about teams is, if you might have heard that there's this movie coming out this year that I'm pretty stoked about. And, there's little bit of information coming out recently, and I think we're going to move right along and take a little gander at this, because if you haven't seen it, you really need to.
What's this?
The force is strong in my family. My father has it. I have it. My sister has it. You have that power too. Chewie, we're home.
Yeah, so that's kind of a big deal in my life, and I just figure we pointed out. It's been actually blowing up all over Twitter, and not just when I'm on my personal account, which I follow pretty much anything and everything that I enjoy, but also when I'm working on the Draft Tech Twitter account, I see NFL draft people talking about it. So it's kind of one of those things that I remember when the prequels were first coming back, way back in 1999, and I'm this nerdy, I would have been in 8th, 9th grade at the time, and the popular kids in school started talking about it, like, no, you don't get to take this from us. This is our thing. You do not get to jump on board now. But now you're seeing that it's prevalent through a wide variety of things that I never thought I'd see mentioning it. But the Disney has done no wrong in my terms of what they've done with the Star Wars franchise to date. And this second teaser, and then the additional one that came out today for a separate film, if you're a Disney stockholder, you're probably going to be made pretty happy over the coming years, because almost 3 years ago when Lucasfilm was sold to Disney for $4 billion, you probably were like, that's a lot of money. How are they going to work? Trust me, it's in good hands. You're going to be fine. So we're going to actually use that. That's not just some random thing we're throwing in here. As we talk about these teams, there was another viral imaging circulating the webs this week, and NFL.com picked it up. So we might as well bring it back. We used it last year on our show for May the 4th, which was completely Star Wars themed because of May the 4th be with you and all that geeky nonsense that we that we love so much. But these started making the rounds. I think they might have been updated a little bit, and they appear much better. So as we talk about the teams and their NFL draft scenarios, we're going to pull up the Star Wars inspired helmets. And of course, first we're going to be talking about the Eagles, and their Star Wars helmet for the Eagles is pretty awesome, I might say.
I think it's the best one.
The Dagobah Yodas take over the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's a pretty cool design, I must say. So we'll start with them and focus on them here. Probably just do one for them, not too many, since we talked about it, or I talked about it with Kyle last week. So again, this is Fanspeak.com's On the Clock mock draft simulator. We're going to do 3 rounds because those are generally the picks that people are most interested in. We're going to use their composite big boards, which means they take their 8, 9, 10 big boards, crunch the numbers and come up with a consensus big board. Some of them that the site uses is Draft Tech, the site I work for, NDT Scouting, Kyle Crabb's site, and a couple other that you'd be very familiar with if you are at all interested in the NFL draft. If not, we're doing it all for you, and we're going to talk about the top prospects available and how the draft could shake out for these teams that you, the listeners, are interested in. So we'll do one with the Eagles right now, and let's get to it. Let's draft. Now, the Eagles have the 20th overall pick if they don't move. And obviously, we're not simulating any trades. This is just straight what would happen if, the first 19 picks are played out. What could the board look like? So we're going here now. The guy you talked about beforehand, Randy Gregory, he just went 13th to the Saints.
Good.
The Dolphins pick at number 14 there. They took, interestingly enough, Alvin Dupree. That's an interesting selection for the computer to make there for the Dolphins, but we'll get them a little bit later. Now, one of the guys that I'm really high on went to the Browns at 19, Eric Kendricks. I don't think the Eagles would be shopping for him, especially since they have Michael Kendricks and the recently added Kiko Alonso. Some of the big names left on the board for the Eagles at pick number 20 in the first round is cornerback Marcus Peters, who I discussed last week with Kyle Crabbs from NDT Scouting. Eagles could use secondary help. There's also some defensive linemen and Oregon defensive linemen.
Is Peters the one that has off the field
kicked
issues?
Off from the Washington squad? Yes.
Yeah.
Running back Todd Gurley, who just had his medical recheck. Everything seems to be okay coming off that ACL tear, but do the Eagles really need a running back? Another defensive lineman, Eddie Goldman, and then you're going to come to a couple guys here. The 3 of the next 4, and depending on their view, actually probably 6 or the next 7 are interesting ones for the Eagles. First off, being wide receiver Jalen Strong, offensive lineman Cameron Irving, cornerback Kevin Johnson, 2 offensive linemen and TJ Clemmings from Pitt and Andres Pete from Stanford, and then Eli Harold, a rush linebacker from Virginia. And you throw in one more, we might as well say cornerback Byron Jones or Jalen Collins. Those are all guys that I think if the board plays out this way, the Eagles would consider at 20. Now, is there one guy on there that you'd be interested in, or a position that you think if this is the way it plays out, this is who they should take?
I don't really know. Clemmings from Pitt kind of sticks out. I saw a couple of their games this year. Usually rooting against them, but their offensive line, it was interesting. They were able to run the ball. Now, was that due to the running back or the line? Usually it's both. But again, Pitt has underachieved the last few years. So I don't really know. Obviously someone else is going to have to be the talent evaluator on that. But I'm interested in shoring up offensive linemen because having guys that can fit into that offensive scheme on the offensive line. And because the offensive line was such an issue, mostly due to injuries last year, but because it was such an issue, being able to get somebody there, if he's deemed a first-round talent and you can get him, and he can fit in there, obviously there's a learning curve there, especially because, I don't know if I don't know if he's a left tackle or right tackle, but, they have Peters still at left tackle, not knowing where they would want to fit him in, but you can't go wrong with having too many offensive linemen.
No, you're right.
And in this scheme where you don't need a ton of time, but you need to be able to let your quarterback make those first few reads and get the ball out of his hands, I definitely feel like offensive line is a key spot. I would love Marcus Peters talent-wise. It scares the crap out of me that you got kicked out of a college football. Because just think about all the things we know about all the players. And I'm not saying just Washington. I'm not saying that this doesn't happen in Penn State. I'm just saying, in major college football, to get kicked off the team, think about what you must do.
And it wasn't...
it's usually not an isolated incident. There's usually lots of stuff you don't know about.
And the thing is, it wasn't... I think the final straw was stuff that actually was not literally on the field, but not off the field it was literally stuff on the team.
Right.
He fought with coaches.
Right. Yeah. And
that's huge red flag.
That's not going to fit at all. Look, and I'm a strong believer in more so than style and all of that stuff. LaShawn McCoy and Chip Kelly, there was just a personality conflict there, and that's why he's gone. Not because he wasn't good enough. Not because he's, irreplaceable, because I think he is. Any running back, in my opinion, is. But when you have this situation, I think it's just, they could really use defensive secondary help. They signed a bunch of free agents in the defensive secondary. Do you try and bring in young guys to kind of mix and match in there? And, as the cap hits grow on some of these guys, you release them and you don't have those big money contracts all going the whole way through. Like, I don't know. But I think Marcus Peters is a big risk. Wide receiver, if there's one you really like there, I know Chip Kelly got a value pick with Matthews last year in the second round. There's been talk that he's worked out some smaller school guys, I know, over the last couple weeks, and maybe you could get in the second round. It's interesting right now because I don't really know. If Jordan Matthews can become your possession receiver, that's awesome. In the NFL now, it seems like you need that blazing fast guy who can stretch the field. So I don't know if they would go that route with a wide receiver. Honestly, a secondary guy or an offensive lineman is what I want.
Who's round. Your pick of those
pick
lists?
Right here, I probably... Right now, having the Eagles in the offensive line situation they're in, I take TJ Clemmings.
You take Clemmings.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to roll with you since this is your team.
Okay.
Of those choices, I think I go Strong.
And that could be. I don't know enough about him. I wouldn't overlook it because he's a Pac-10/Pac-12 wide receiver. So Chip Kelly knows him. Don't overlook that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd go Jalen Strong. I just think the Eagles need the receiver help. I like Jordan Matthews. I was all in on him last year.
Absolutely.
I think adding Strong
on him.
No, my gosh.
Any team that has one wide receiver,
3 or 4.
Right? Any team that has one wide receiver is in trouble. And you could argue that the Eagles' one is Jordan Matthews, and he's kind of unproven just because he was a rookie last year. And then your second one, the guy I was hoping they could get in the second round just went to the Browns, Dorial Beckham-Green. But
yeah, Dorial Beckham.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so in your scenario, we're up to the 52nd pick, this 20th pick in round 2.
Yeah.
The Eagles are on the clock. You took an offensive lineman. There's still one of the better offensive linemen left on the board. One of those things you never know. But there is a cornerback health. There are wide receivers, one of which I know both myself and Kyle Krabs are very high on, is Nelson Aguilar from USC. Running backs probably again not likely. I would think.
I don't want a running back in the first 2 days unless. I'll be honest, if they're sitting there at this second pick, which is 52?
Yep.
If they're sitting at 52 and one of the top guys for some reason has slipped, okay, but TJ Yeldon was fun to watch last year at Alabama, but I don't really know. I don't think running back is necessarily where I would go. When offensive lineman, I don't think there's any way they go offensive lineman in the first 2 picks.
No, I don't believe so either. So I think it comes down to Ronald Darby, the cornerback from Florida State, Devin Smith, wide receiver Ohio State, Nelson Aguilar, wide receiver from USC, then probably maybe Walford from Miami. I don't think so. I think they're high on earth, although I'm sure he'd like to have 2 tight ends, and Selleck, I think, is on his way out eventually. You could see that a couple other cornerback options in Quentin Rollins from Miami and Eric Rowe, who both could possibly be better at safety. I think you probably draw the line there. I mean, I like Trey Jackson, the guard from Florida State, but like you said, they took Clemmings in the first. I highly doubt you're going to take him in the second.
Right.
So again, I'm going to let you steer your team. Do you want cornerback, wide receiver?
I'm going to go where you mentioned. I'm going wide receiver Nelson Aguilar.
I think that's the exact pick that I would make. Now, in my scenario, I took Strong in the first round. You have no idea how it would have played out if it would have went that way. But seeing Aguilar now, he's been on the board now both times we've done this simulation. Well, last week when I did it with Kyle, and now this week with you. If I'm an Eagles fan and you can guarantee yourself Nelson Aguilar in round 2, just like you got Jordan Matthews last year, I think that's an excellent value and would be a wonderful pick in additions to the Eagles offense. All right, so this is the last one for the Eagles here. We're doing round 3 again. This is fanspeak.com's on the clock function where you become front office manager for a team. Use a variety of big boards to figure out how the drafts are going to play out. And here we are with the Eagles. We're in round 3 now. with overall pick 84. So the Eagles have added, under the tutelage of Justin Raffoff, offensive tackle or offensive lineman TJ Clemmings in round 1. And in round 2, he just took Nelson Aguilar, the wide receiver from USC. You're probably leaning secondary help, I would think. And a couple of them are still on the board in DBs Eric Rowe from Utah, Alex Carter from Stanford, and Quandre Diggs from Texas.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that jumps out to you?
Those are the 3 that are really sticking out to me. Now, I just picked a wide receiver in the last one. I'm not going that way again, but I have seen the Trey McBride stuff, William and Mary, part of just that small school kid who just put up ridiculous numbers and highlights kind of last year. So he's there. I don't think that's where we're going. Just a name that kind of pops out to me. I really don't know. I kind of like Alex Carter from Stanford. Just, I don't know. It is kind of a bias. I like going with the Stanford players. Again, part of it is who I like. Part of it is who I think Chip would like.
Right, you want to lean towards what you think they're going to do, not necessarily who you would take.
Right. I think Alex Carter is a guy that I could see Chip Kelly taking. I see you have highlighted lower on the list. I'm not even going to try to say the name.
Ifo Ekpe-Olomu.
Yeah.
He's been dealing with injuries. There was a chance he was going to come out last year, and Draft Tech had him as a first-round pick.
Doesn't always make Chip shy away.
No. And he is in Oregon, and I believe Chip Kelly recruited him. You know, people were having him go to the Eagles last year in the draft before he decided to return.
But another, just kind of on a side note, we joke about this. The Pac-12 doesn't play defense, all that stuff. But in reality, Pac-12 secondary guys go one-on-one a lot more than other places, in my opinion. Because you're playing a lot of teams that just throw the ball all the time. As opposed to, I love Penn State, but you're not seeing Penn State secondary guys on here a whole lot. You know what I mean?
No, although I know
there are other
Adrian Amos been shooting
and
up.
He has been shooting up, and he's getting lots of workouts and everything like that, and deservedly so. But you don't a lot of times see a ton of Big Ten, secondary guys. Now Michigan State had a couple who
Trey Waynes this year.
Right.
They had Decrease Denard last year. My dad says no matter who they pick. He says, no matter who they pick, the Eagles, it's not going to help them anyway. All right, so I think you're saying we need secondary.
I'm going Alex Carter.
You want Alex Carter?
Yeah.
All right. I can't say I disagree. Any of those, Eric Rowe's a great option.
Right.
I am high on Quandre Diggs and the Oregon connection with Ekpe-Olomu. Any of those would work well. I think the way the draft unfolded was an absolute windfall for the Eagles. I think if these are their first 3 picks, that's an excellent draft where you get security on the offensive line, which you need in this league. And you get another wide receiver after losing Macklin, and you add young depth to your secondary. Despite adding those 2 in free agency, you always got to be developing them, especially depending on what they do with Boykin. But, you're seeing more often than not, you're seeing at least 3, if not 4 wide receiver sets, or even, if you find the big enough, strong enough cornerback safety to cover a tight end, that's, more often than not, you're in nickel and dime packages anyway. So, tackle TJ Clemmings, wide receiver Nelson Aguilar, and cornerback Alex Carter were Justin's pick for the Eagles in this draft simulation. All right. Who are we going to go to next?
I believe we're going to go to that other team in the NFC East.
Yeah, we're going to go to the Dallas Cowboys now, and I won't make you draft for them because I'm sure probably would tank.
I will.
You probably would tank them as much as possible. So
yeah, how far down does this scroll?
Right, I'm gonna take over the Cowboys here for this next simulation, and we'll do the same 3 rounds we've been doing, and we're going to use fan speaks on the clock composite big boards and move right along here. All right, 3 rounds for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's draft. They're picking later than the Eagles, way down, I think at 27 is where the Cowboys will make their first pick. I have a decent handle on their needs and who they may be focusing on with my work from Draft Tech. So let's see how the draft plays out for them.
Let's see who they have the Eagles take.
Alvin Dupree. He's they have him listed as a defensive end. For the Eagles, he'd be a rush linebacker. All right, so now the guy that I was aiming for the Cowboys, because I think it would make a perfect pick after losing DeMarco Murray and the rumors surrounding Adrian Peterson, which is not going to happen, by the way. I wanted Todd Gurley. The Ravens took him at 26.
Oh, man.
Okay, so literally the spot right in front of me, I lose out on Todd Gurley. So what are they going to do now? What are the Cowboys going to do? So there's a lot of interesting options up on the board for me at this point at pick 27. We got defensive lineman Eddie Goldman from Florida State, wide receiver Jalen Strong, who was would have been my pick for the Eagles in the last round, or excuse me, for the Eagles pick that we did just a few minutes ago. Melvin Gordon is available. He's generally the second-ranked running back. He's coming out of Wisconsin. I'm not necessarily all in on him as much as I would be on Gurley. And if Gurley didn't tear his ACL, I think he could have possibly been a top 10 pick this year.
I agree. I've heard that lots of places too.
Now, our draft tech analyst went with a cornerback in the last one. And the cornerback that he selected is actually available. And I know that the Cowboys have been struggling in the secondary. They haven't been getting... the players that they've drafted or acquired in free agency haven't lived up to the hype, and that maybe been one of the issues that the Cowboys needed to address this offseason. So cornerback Kevin Johnson from Wake Forest, he's on the board, and it would be a nice addition to the Cowboys. They don't really need offensive linemen. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league, so Andres Pete or Jake Fisher would just kind of be unnecessary. Now, there's a possibility maybe the Cowboys prefer Byron Jones from Connecticut at cornerback, or even Jalen Collins from LSU. I don't think they go wide receiver necessarily. I think I'm going to go with Kevin Johnson from Wake Forest. I don't doubt the draft tech Cowboys analyst. I think he makes the right decision there. And the other options, probably my backup would have been Eddie Goldman from Florida State. I think the Cowboys could improve their the depth and talent along the defensive line, and possibly look to win the NFC East again, which no one saw happening last year. We actually thought they'd be one of the worst teams in the league, and surprised everyone. So in the first round of this draft simulation for the Cowboys, I went with cornerback Kevin Johnson from Wake Forest. Now let's see how the second round plays out here. The Cowboys picks coming up here. All right, we're in the mid rounds, or the mid picks. Eagles just took, an outside linebacker.
Hey.
All right, so now round 2 for the Cowboys. What do they need? Now, they do have running back options. I talk about how I like Todd Gurley. They lost DeMarco Murray. Obviously, they added Darren McFadden. Another guy that I think is flying a bit under the radar is Tevin Coleman from Indiana. He had a lot of comparable statistics to Melvin Gordon from Wisconsin, but doesn't seem to get the hype. He might be a solid second-round addition. Obviously, I'm not going to go with another cornerback, but until his DUI arrest, P.J. Williams was a guy I really liked from Florida State. I think they stay away from him, though, there. Nelson Aguilar, Philip Dorsett, a couple of wide receivers available.
Do you think T.J. Yeldon gets a look from them? Or do you think they're looking more for a guy like, I don't know, Yeldon...
I think people are starting to get wary of Alabama running backs.
No, and that's understandable. I don't know, because he's such like a physical beast. I don't know that Jerry Jones could stay away. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I understand that. Is there anyone from Arkansas available?
I was thinking that.
Now, I need to make a decision here. Do I want to go with the Tevin Coleman, who I think would be a nice addition there? I'm higher on him than Yeldon, so I wouldn't go in that direction. Amir Abdullah has versatility and fumbling issues. I do like a J.I. from Boise State. So Coleman or J.I. would be an interesting contribution to the Cowboys. The only other option, I think, floating around out there would be either defensive end Nate Orchard from Utah and defensive tackle Xavier Cooper from Washington State, in my opinion. I think those are guys that the Cowboys could look to add in the second round, but I'm actually going to think that they're going to try to replace Murray with 2 people, and I'm going to go with Tevin Coleman for the Cowboys here in round 2.
And it makes sense to replace him with two people because that's how most of the systems go now.
Right.
You don't see a lot of teams taking their one guy and just running him into the ground. Unless you're the Cowboys, and that's pretty much what they did with Marco Murray, and then the Eagles signed him.
Coming out on top in that one. All right. Now, while we're waiting for the third round to shake out, we're getting more text from my dad here about the Cowboys. If the Cowboys get Peterson, how will that affect? Well, they have to give up a first round pick. If they give up a first round pick, they're stupid, and I don't think they're going to. I think Stephen Jones has his dad under control. I think they know what his value is going to be. He's a 30-year-old running back. He's been injury prone in the past. The NFL has him under, watch, under alert because of what's gone on. If the Vikings are desperate to get rid of him, maybe you offer a second round pick.
The Vikings are desperate to get rid of him because with that, I say new CBA, but under the current CBA, if he sits out and doesn't play, he loses a year. Like he doesn't get paid, doesn't get it that year, doesn't go towards free agency. He loses it. Like he's basically forfeiting his career if he chooses not to play for the Vikings.
Essentially,
and if he doesn't play well, everyone's going to be like, oh, running back over 30, and he's not going to get anything, relatively speaking. When the Vikings do cut him or do move on from him.
Right.
Yeah, the Vikings have all of the cards in this, and
I don't think
it's the Vikings, so I don't know that they'll play it right. This is the team that couldn't get their draft pick in on time, I believe 2 years in a row, and so I don't think that there's a chance it could happen, but I don't see it happening. And if I'm the Vikings though, I say I set the price at a first overall and stuff, and others, because not first overall, but your first round pick. Because listen, if you're willing to give up that much for him, sure, I'll trade him. But if you're not, then we're keeping him. You know what I mean? Like, set a high price because you don't need to trade him. But if somebody's going to be stupid enough to do it, then take advantage of it. Especially if they can trade him to somewhere. Obviously they're not going to trade him in the NFC North or anything like that.
Right.
But
I addressed the need at the defensive line, and I think the way the draft shook out, I got to go with Jerry Jones's alma mater in Arkansas and went with defensive end Trey Flowers. So the Cowboys draft played out: cornerback Kevin Johnson, running back Tevin Coleman, defensive lineman Trey Flowers. So that's the Cowboys, and we're gonna start over here now and move on to another NFL team that's familiar with the. With our listeners, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and their Star Wars helmet is up on the site if you're watching us. We're going to move on and do them now. We're going to roll through these quickly because I do want to do every team, and we're running out of time. So we're going to go through pretty quickly with this. Again, this is Fanspeak.com's On the Clock mock draft simulator using composite big boards for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 3 rounds. Here we go. Okay. I think in every single one of these, Jameis Winston was the first pick. I haven't been taking notice where Mariota went.
He went second in the first one we looked at.
Did he? Okay,
and
this one he went 6th.
Yeah.
Dolphins took Waynes in this one. Let's see who the Eagles take. Eagles took Peters. A need, sure.
I know, but
okay.
Not a need is the guy who's always in trouble.
Now, the Steelers are up. They've got a decent amount of needs, including a retired Troy Polamalu.
Yeah. To me, it's pretty clear who they take here, or let me rephrase that, who they should take, but I don't know that they do. Do they look at cornerback because they just lost Ike Taylor as well?
Right.
Like,
I could see them taking Kevin Johnson or Byron Jones. They certainly have a need at safety with Polamalu gone, although he's been a shell of himself the last few years anyways. Some people aren't as high as Landon Collins as a lot of these mock draft sites are. He's ranked 16th on this composite big board. I think they could go that direction. They've really stayed away from DBs. And the guy that I'm looking at right now, they have a penchant for developing rushers. And if there's a place that someone should go that's had problems, it's probably Pittsburgh because of the consistency in ownership and the willingness.
You have a running back who's already going to miss the first 3 games because of marijuana DUI. Like, I think that might be a tough sell this year. I think Randy Gregory is a tough sell this year because your second best player, if you want to count Ben as your best player, well, maybe your third. I don't know. It depends where you put Antonio Brown and all that. But like your best pick from last year or 2 years ago is now in trouble. So I think they go away from Randy Gregory, even though the potential's there for him to be a great player.
Then I think, while I went Kevin Johnson for the Cowboys in the last one, I think I'm going to go with Byron Jones this time around. He's been a guy really rising. They need DB help. I am passing on Landon Collins.
Me too, because I think a team's going to draft the cornerback over the safety when they don't view a big gap. Now, if you have like an incredible safety, okay, go ahead. But like, I think they're going to go with cornerback first because you can get. It's easier to get a safety later, I think, than the cornerback.
Yeah, this is a weak safety class, and the Steelers might feel that they have better options in-house than what's going to be available. All right, so we're in the second round with the Steelers here.
Your cornerbacks sometimes can become safeties. Your safeties don't usually become cornerbacks.
Right,
like,
exactly.
It's like your starting pitchers can become relievers. Usually your relievers don't become starting pitchers.
The Eagles took Devin Smith over Aguilar there. I'm not sure I would have done that. But the Steelers are on the clock with Aguilar, Yeldon, Tomlinson, Duke Johnson, Philip Dorsett, Grady Jarrett, Clive Walford. I think actually knowing that while they love Heath Miller, he's not going to play forever.
He's been there a long time.
And one of the better tight ends in this class is former Hurricanes tight end Clive Walford. So I think that's where I would go. So Byron Jones in round 1, cornerback from Connecticut. Clive Walford, tight end from Miami, Florida, in round 2. We'll do one more round with the Steelers before wrapping up.
Who is their backup quarterback? Did they draft the quarterback last year?
They did. Was it last year or 2 years ago? Landry Jones,
that's right,
Oklahoma.
That's right.
We're going to finish the AFC. We'll do my AFC East teams. We'll start next week with the Ravens, and then do my Dolphins, and then the Patriots. So we'll do 3 this week, 3 next week. Obviously, we're going to talk NFL draft next week because it's the last show before the actual draft. And we'll do these 3 scenarios with those teams, Ravens, Dolphins, Patriots. But we'll also get to talk about the NFL schedule release, which will be coming out either Tuesday or Wednesday this week. All right, last pick. We're in round 3 with the Steelers here. They got a cornerback and a tight end. We mentioned they need more defensive back help. The safety, Josh Shaw from USC, maybe they get lucky with another USC safety. He is the guy that had that questionable reports on what happened to his injury. He said that he jumped to save, I think, his nephew or a cousin at a party, and it turned out that was not the case.
It's interesting. Xavier Cooper's there from Washington State. I don't know. I know there's a lot of turnover in the Steelers' defense in general, from coordinator on down. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out this year and how that is reflected in their draft, because there's definitely needs there. They had some people walk away. Some people retired. All over the place. Was it Worlds? Did he retire too?
Yeah, he did. Well, he was actually a free agent.
I know he's a free agent, but he walked away too. So really, I know he's a free agent, but they had 3 of maybe their top players on defense retire this year.
Right.
That's kind of crazy.
It is crazy. Thinking about it here, looking at how the board fell, we already got some defensive back help. We added a tight end for the future. Le'Veon Bell suspended. They got rid of Blunt last year. Who's taking over for Bell? Who's their backup right now?
I don't even know.
I can't even think of him off the top of my head.
Because they usually have 2 or 3 guys that they kind of rotate through. But
looking at some of the names available in the 3rd round, I'm not high on Abdullah because of the fumbling issues, but either Duke Johnson or J.I. from Boise State, I'd be happy with them. I think either of them could fit in Pittsburgh. Oh, don't they have one of the scat backs? Or did he go to Jacksonville? There was 2 recently that the Steelers and Jaguars each got one. Is it Dry Archer?
No, they do. They have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not a feature back. Could you pair him? I probably would go with a J.I. from Boise State. I know he was actually Kyle Crabb's 2nd-ranked running back behind Gurley in front of Gordon. So the Steelers get him in the 3rd round. So Byron Jones, Clive Walford, J.I. from Boise State. Those are the 3 Steelers pick on this Fan Speak on the Clock mock draft simulation here on the Joe Mays and J-Raff show. All right, so that was the Steelers. We did Eagles, Cowboys, Steelers, and just show it up there. That's how things played out in the first 3 rounds with the Steelers picks right over here. All right, so that's the first part of our NFL draft scenario show. We'll come back with the second part to analyze the Ravens, Dolphins, and Patriots next week, as well as look into the NFL schedule release and how exactly the primetime games shape up. The Dolphins get to play the Eagles this year, so we'll know a time and date for that. And I've heard a rumor that it could be the first weekend of the season.
Hey,
so we could go from a weekend with Wilson playing Mifflin, my wife's 30th birthday party, come back, NFL starts the following week, follow it with an Eagles-Dolphins game in Philadelphia. So we'll find all that out, though, in the next few days.
that would be pretty awesome.
So we'll see how that all plays out. I know you have something you'd probably like to address here.
Yeah, shout out my son Austin today actually.
Literally today.
Is his first birthday. So it's been a crazy year, but it's unreal. I mean, I'm sure you obviously understand.
I'm about to understand again.
It's the fastest and longest year of your life. Mostly fast, but there are just moments, mostly crying in the middle of the night, that lead you to think this is taking forever. But no, it's been an awesome year. So hopefully we have many more awesome years to go.
Yeah, definitely. And happy birthday to Austin. We got to celebrate yesterday. It's crazy how fast all that stuff goes. It's just insane. Also celebrating birthday today is coworker Beth, so happy birthday to her. And to celebrate her birthday, she gets to come back to work tomorrow after her being off for a couple weeks.
Happy birthday.
With an injury.
I gave a quiz the other day on the kid's birthday.
Was he happy about that?
It's my birthday. I'm like, happy birthday.
All right. Anything else from you?
No, not today.
All right, then I think that's everything. Thanks for joining us. This wraps up the 172nd episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday evening at 6:30 for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Don't forget, you can download each episode of the show from the podcast section of the iTunes Store. We'll see you next time, and thanks again for listening.